Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird, here to do a solo review of a movie that is sort of a long time coming at this point. It is Insidious: The Last Key, otherwise known as Insidious 4. Now, I wanted to do this review when the movie actually came out. Unfortunately, it just never worked out with my schedule to be able to get to see it in the theater. So I finally got around to it now that it's around on Redbox. I went and checked it out. And I was actually excited, you guys. I'm a big fan of the Insidious franchise overall, especially the first two movies, done by James Wan. How could you not? I was a fan of the third as well, although to a lesser extent. And then finally we get the third, which was directed by Adam Robitel, starring Lin Shaye once again as Elise. This one is a sequel to the third movie, still a prequel to the first two movies. So much so, in fact, that this one actually closes the loop. Without spoiling anything, because we know what's going to happen, at the end of this movie, Elise gets a call about Dalton from the very first Insidious movie. So this is the last in the sort of Elise interim Insidious movies, which is appropriate because this movie is squarely in Elise's camp. It is all about her home from her childhood, and it's all about her family and and how her gift sort of began and what it's done to her family and her life from the very beginning. So I'm going to do this review like we normally do our reviews. I'll do the overall thoughts, talk about the story, talk about the acting, the effects, the cinematography, all that stuff in turn. But to start off, I will say that while I enjoyed the movie all right, it's definitely, I think, my least favorite of the Insidious movies. It did a couple of things interestingly, but ultimately it was a unsatisfying and, truthfully, at least the villain was sort of unexplained. I guess they tried to sort of create a villain for the overall Insidious, the nether, sort of villain. They tried to create someone that has the key to all the red doors that we've seen in the different Insidious movies. So while that idea is interesting, it was ultimately unfulfilled in this movie. I will say that while it was, like I said, sort of on one level kind of enjoyable, it was ultimately a bit disappointing for me. Going into the story, it is about Elise. We start off the movie seeing a bit of Elise's past, where she has a brother, and she actually had this gift to see ghosts from a very young age, and her mom understood and did not scold her for it, but her father was a vastly different story. He did not like the fact that she had these powers, and that made it very tough for her growing up. And so there's an incident early in the movie that we find out that Elise was involved in, where her ability to see the dead actually ended up with the death of a parent. And then it basically it ended with the death of her mom. That's in the very opening, so it's not a spoiler. But then it left her and her brother to deal with a very angry and disbelieving father, and so that sort of goes to the background of Elise, and she sees ghosts in this house as a kid all the time. The father never believes her. But she eventually, in this movie, gets a call from someone in the, nowadays when she's older, played by Lin Shaye once again. She gets a call saying that there's a man living in the house and he's seeing ghosts and he needs her help. And at first she doesn't want to go back, but, eventually she relents and she brings her two ghost-busting buddies, Specs and Tanner, I believe. Played by Lee Wan-el once again, and Angus, let me get his name right, Angus Sampson, that's right, okay, and Ken Acevedo plays the man that owns the house now. So it's a solid cast, it's the same cast as before, but it's just sort of a weaker story. Once Lin Shaye arrives and you sort of find out what's going on, there is an interesting twist regarding what was actually going on when they were a kid, rather than it just being ghosts per se. There's a bit of other kind of evil at work in this Insidious movie. which was kind of interesting, but not interesting enough, in my opinion. So the story was overall kind of lackluster. Elise has to face this badness that she sort of unleashed as a kid, and it's just not wholly satisfying in my estimation. So that's the story in itself. The acting, though, again, with those returning characters, with Specs, Tucker, and Elise all returning, you know it's a solid effort because they're all solid actors and they know what they're doing at this point. I enjoy them every time I see them, and Lynn Shay especially. I'm a big fan of hers, and I love that she's married to Bob Shay, if I'm not mistaken, who was the ex-head of New Line Cinema, who was actually in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. That is her husband, the guy that Nancy goes to see, that Heather Langenkamp goes to see in the New Line offices. So that's Bob Shay. I believe that's the man that's married to Lynn Shay. So it's a cool horror family loop. I enjoy seeing Lynn Shay as a result of that. But yeah, you know, the acting is completely serviceable. The creepy thing, the key creature, he looks pretty good. So let's jump into the the acting is, like I said, it is what it is. It's just fine, but it's nothing that is like Oscar-worthy performances, of course. I want to get into the effects though, because the key creature was pretty interesting looking. The problem is when you linger on him too much, it gets a little less scary. In small doses, he's pretty scary, and I like that. I think they should have saved the fact that he can turn off your screams. They should have not put that in the trailer, because that is a really cool thing, but because we saw it in the trailer, it was just way less impactful to me. So, you know, that is what it is. But he was still a cool looking creature, but he was just not explained. There was not enough backstory to him. Insidious was actually pretty good, except for the first movie. They didn't really explain the red-faced demon, but the old lady demon, they explained in depth in both Insidious 2 and 3. So I was used to Insidious explaining the bad, and they did not do that in this one. But we did get a glimpse at the very end of a certain thing that I was hoping for in both Insidious 2 and 3 and did not get. We got a little glimpse of at the end of 4, so that was cool. But yeah, you know, the key creature, the effects of him, you know, his practical look was really cool. Once again, another very thin actor. I'm sure it's someone that I've seen in other things. I just don't know what it is, but he was really effective. But you know, if it wasn't PG-13, it felt PG-13 because there was nothing to my recollection that would have garnered an R rating in this film, and I think to its detriment. I think these movies have become a little bit rote. I liked them much better when James Wan was at the helm. Now they just seem like sort of pale imitations of their own franchise, so it's kind of a bummer. It is nice to see Elise alive and running with her little, you know, ghost beater buddies, but outside of that, I could do without these films. It's kind of a bummer to say that because they're just carbon copies. 1 and 2 were really good. 2 was a legitimate continuation of 1, right where it picks up, right where the first one leaves off in the old school horror tradition, and then 3 and 4 just kind of lost their way. They're trying to recapture something, but they're not doing it, and it's a bit of a bummer. So you know, while the creature effect was cool, the cinematography is accomplished. It's fine. It's nothing necessarily that it's like, oh my god, you have to see it for the cinematography, but there is some good stuff in it. There's some random stuff in it too, like when something happens and something just goes flying off into the darkness, it's like, what? Why is that? Like, it's so weird. There's some weird choices that they made, but you know, that is what it is. Ultimately, the cinematography was good, but it didn't save the movie. It didn't make it, you know, anywhere near as good as the other 3. In fact, I actually, like I said, I enjoyed the third one pretty well. So this is just not as good, even though the completist inside me that has to love movies that characters I know return in, like, no matter how bad they are, if the same character comes back in a sequel, I'm gonna watch it and I'm gonna enjoy it to some degree. But I have to start being honest with myself, and even though Elise and the two Ghost Beater boys came back, I just did not like the film that much. I have to be honest with myself. I have to be honest with you guys. I was hoping for more. I really was. But maybe I suspected it wasn't going to be great, and that's why I held off on watching it. Who knows? I'm glad I only paid $1.50 to watch it, though. I will say that. So I think that's going to do it for my review of Insidious: The Last Key. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of this one. I'm way late to the party. I'm going to finally be able to watch some reviews that I've been sitting on for a while because I didn't want to have anything spoiled, although who cares? I mean, it doesn't matter. It was not a good movie. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird, and remember, stay scared.